Our next speaker is a lawyer and founder of the international nonprofit organization Nature's Rights and the International Center for Wholistic Law. She has a degree in zoology. Ay, parang zoology. Saan ba ako nagpunta? Sorry. Wait lang po, yung Bicolana in me got the better of me. Okay po. So she's a graduate. She has a degree in zoology, an award-winning public speaker, systematic constellations practitioner. Wow, grabe. Tumingin tayo mamaya sa mga sa constellations pala. And has facilitated healing workshops around the world. Her focus is on realigning law, living and written with the universal laws that govern all life and facilitating inner and outer transformation. Today, she will talk about the ecocentric economics. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for us to be joined by Nature's Rights Executive Director. Let us all welcome with a round of applause, Attorney Mumta Ito.
Hi there, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And it's such a pleasure and honor to be part of what you're doing in the Philippines. I feel that, you know, the work that you're doing there is super exciting. It'll be really wonderful, you know, if more countries outside of Latin America start to move in this direction of honoring the rights of nature. So yeah, it's really an honor and a privilege to speak with you. I'm sure a lot of you've had a lot of good talks today and you've been campaigning for a while. So I'm sure you're quite familiar with the whole concept of the rights of nature and what it means, and earth jurisprudence and the attitudes that comprise earth jurisprudence. So if there's, you know, I hope that what I have to share with you will add to what you're doing, and that it may spark some insights or maybe help to piece things together from maybe a slightly different perspective, maybe reinforce the same perspective that you've had. So I'm going to share my screen, except it says host disabled participant screen sharing. Can the host please enable the screen sharing for me, because I need to show some slides. Okay, so a little bit about the work that I've been doing. A few years ago, I formed the organization Nature's Rights. And as you can see, the strapline for this organization is transform the system. Now, a lot of people, when they hear about nature's rights, they think that it's just to do with nature. And it's about the rights of nature against the rights of humans, or the rights of nature against the economy, or, you know, going back to the caves, or some kind of idea like that. And they don't really link it to how the rights of nature can give rise to the type of systemic shifts that we need in our societal system as a whole. So so that's why we chose the strapline, transform the system, because our entire economic system is founded on the fact that nature has no rights, that nature is there for the exploiting, that it is separate to us, that the human being is not part of nature, that nature is treated as objects, property, and resources, enables the economic system to work as it does. It enables infinite growth. It enables economics based on infinite growth, agriculture that poisons the earth, energy that depletes nature faster than she can replenish. Because if we recognized in the law that nature has its rights to exist, to thrive, to its vital cycles, to be able to renew itself, and that our rights derive from the rights of nature. If we had that recognized in our legal system, it just wouldn't be possible to, it wouldn't be legal. It wouldn't be possible to have the kind of neoliberal economics that we have right now, which is based on extraction and based on exploiting the earth to dangerous levels, which destabilize everything. So just to make that point, I'm sure you all think of nature's rights as a systemic shift, but some people think that it's just about the rights of the trees or the rights of the ocean. We carry on our economics as we always have. Well, this is not possible. So this a little bit about our stance. There is no environment with the Earth's extended body. So this is the kind of paradigm shift or the mind shift that most of our legal system is based on the idea, or it premises that environment is out there and it exists around us, and we are here separate to it. We can master it and we can use it. And to a certain extent, yes, on one level, it may appear that way. But if we look at it deeply, everything that we need to exist on this planet comes from the earth, even the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, our human bodies, everything's made up of the 5 elements. And so if you were to take our human rights and in a vacuum as it is at the moment, and take it out of the context of planet Earth, say you took the human being, you put him out in space somewhere where we don't have all the things that Earth provides us in order to survive, what do our human rights mean? Our human rights mean nothing. So our human rights only mean something in the context of our existence on the planet, because we are intricately connected to the Earth. We are part of the Earth. We are, in fact, part of the Earth's extended body. So this here is part of some work that I did for the European Economic and Social Committee a few years ago. So when we started with nature's rights here in Europe, it was with I received, basically, I worked in environmental law, and I received some guidance that came in an unusual way. And it was the product of a spiritual inquiry and a series of meditations that that I set up nature's rights in response to. And part of that insight was to bring a European Citizens Initiative, because we have participatory democracy here in Europe. And so we started organizing for an initiative, and we created a draft law for Europe, and we were about to launch our initiative to collect 1 million. We had to collect 1 million statements of support across 7 member states. So it was going to be a large campaign, but we thought we'd take our initiative to the Parliament first and sound out how it would land. So we went to the Parliament in 2017. We had a big conference of stakeholders and various people. We had cross-party representation. We had the head of the European Environment Agency, the head of the IUCN. All of these people were very supportive, and the ideas were really well received, and people really got it that there is something fundamental missing from our system of rights, that we have human rights, we have corporate rights, but what about the rights of nature? It actually forms the foundation of all of those rights. And when we put this back into the system, everything starts to fall into a natural order based upon the natural orders in life. So people were really taking on board these ideas. However, we were informed that the timing was not good to bring the initiative because it was a time when the European Commission were getting rid of all of the nature laws. And so those organizations that would have supported us had to argue that the existing system of law is working well. And so we were advised, don't do the initiative now, bring it later. But in the interim, I got approached by the European Economic and Social Committee, who had presented a climate rights bill, which included the rights of nature. However, the Commission came back, they didn't say anything about the rights of nature, but they said, well, climate rights, we're doing a lot about climate change, you know, it's all the same thing. So they approached me and they said, you've been proposing this initiative for nature's rights in the European Union. Do you think nature's rights can encompass all of the other rights? And how would it work in the social and economic context? You know, do you think it can be a socio-economic solution? And I said, well, absolutely. You know, that's what jurisprudence is. And so they commissioned a study, which I was involved in writing together with some colleagues, researchers from the University of Siena, University of Salento, University of Bologna in Italy. And this was looking into the feasibility of a fundamental EU charter for the rights of nature that would sit on par with, you know, the fundamental charter for human rights and that kind of thing, or rather, you know, become a foundation for those other rights, because that is the position that we're in, that our relationship with the earth is not really one of partnership. People talk about partnership, but it's more akin to the fetus in the womb, because we are utterly dependent upon nature. It's like the fetus, you know, you kill the mother, you kill the fetus, you know, unless you manage to extract the fetus and it's self-sufficient enough, but you know, but it's not going to be as optimal. And in our case, I don't think there's a matter of extracting us and we're going to survive on our own out there in outer space, like some people think. You know, I think we have a perfectly good earth. We have a paradise here. Let's you know, let's work in a way that we're a grateful fetus rather than a parasitic cancer or something like that. So anyway, with the European Economic and Social Committee, the diagrams that I'm going to share with you forms the basis of what we propose to them for the charter. So here in this diagram that I have up, the current system without nature's rights, if we think of our society as an iceberg, you look at the top part of the iceberg, the negative outcomes. We have the ecological crisis, inequality, poverty, pandemics, ill health, the climate crisis, the food crisis, the economic crisis, the sixth mass extinction, all of these things. And all of these things are just the visible part. Now, most of our societal solutions, and this includes our government interventions, it includes the NGOs, they all work on this top part of the iceberg. But what we don't see is the silo systems and structures, the mechanistic paradigm worldview, the separation consciousness, which generate all of these negative outcomes on autopilot. So whilst our societal systems are working at the top on crisis management, as soon as one fire is put out, another one is being generated from within. So it's a perpetual cycle. And this is why everybody is so exhausted in the environmental movement and why we're not making any headway, because we're not tackling lower down the iceberg, the root cause that keeps generating all these crises and making them legal. So if we were to go down the iceberg, right down to the root, the lower down the iceberg we work, the more leverage we have. So what that means is that a small change lower down the iceberg brings about a massive shift in the whole of society. And that's the point I'm trying to make here with nature's rights. It might seem like a small shift, but when you follow it all the way through and integrate it throughout all of society as it should be integrated, it can result in massive systemic shift, not just in the outer way that our society operates, but also internally in the way we perceive our relationship with nature, in the way that we honor nature, in the way that we live our lives, which would be a lot more rewarding for us. So let's look lower down the iceberg, the invisible parts of the iceberg. So just beneath all the negative outcomes, we have the silo systems and structures. So that's where you have your economics department separate to your agricultural department, separate to the department that deals with your urban system, separate to the department that deals with energy, and so on. Now, usually these departments are not coordinated and their laws are separate as well. So the laws are not integrated. Now, here in the European Union, we even have in the treaties the integration principle that all the environmental measures have to be fully integrated. But because environmental law deals with the periphery and it doesn't actually affect this, the iceberg, one, it's not integrated fully. Secondly, even if those laws are integrated, it still does nothing to affect the fundamental orientation of our economic system, our agricultural system, and so on. So, yeah, so if we go one below the silo systems and structures, we have the mechanistic paradigm where the Enlightenment, the so-called Enlightenment view, well, I'm sure it probably was some form of enlightenment in those days, but we know so much more now. So it's no longer an enlightened view for us in our world today with the level of knowledge that we have now. But it was seeing the world as a machine, seeing that all non-human beings had no soul, and therefore they were like machines, like items in a shopping cart. Well, we know, you know, science has long recognized complexity theory and many things like that, that we are in a living world with many, many living surrounded by living organisms, a living biosphere that operates in intricately complex ways, and we are interactive with that, and we are part of it. So we cannot expect to have healthy human beings on a sick planet because we are part of that planetary system. Our bodies are physically part of the planetary system. And science has moved so far as to recognize that we are, in fact, everything is in fact 99.9% space. But yet law is still stuck in seeing, you know, all of nature as objects, property, and resources, which is really a very kind of archaic paradigm, worldview that is out of sync with the reality of what we know to be true. So we go one step deeper and we say, well, what causes this mechanistic paradigm? It's the separation consciousness. And I'd say separation consciousness gets embedded into law as treating the human being separate to nature. So that's where nature is objects, property, and resources. Human beings have rights. Human beings have legal personality. Nothing else has, except for corporations, which is another fiction. And where does all this separation consciousness come from? All that sits on a bedrock of trauma. Now, in the human being, when there is trauma, it fragments the psyche. It splits off different parts, and it gets the person stuck in a perpetual flight and fight mode. Now, if you look at our iceberg at the moment, our society as a whole, we have fragmented systems. We have fragmented system of law. It's not integrated. It doesn't operate as a cohesive whole. Everything's dealt with separately. And if you look at crisis management, what is crisis management? It's flight or fight. Flight or fight. You look at our political system, it's flight or fight. It's reactive. So instead of being reactive with nature's rights, we're saying we need to be proactive. But proactive where and how is what I'll come to. So all of this iceberg, I say, leads to the degenerative cycle or the death cycle, where you have the separation consciousness, which drives scarcity, fear, competition, which is then encoded into this mechanistic paradigm where the earth is dead, nature operates like a machine, the win-lose mentality, law becomes mechanistic, adversarial, retributive, tries to solve problems by fighting the other one instead of trying to find co-creative solutions, acknowledging that we are all part of an integrated whole. So problems are often dealt with in isolation as well. Like an environmental issue will get solved just on its own merits. For example, a really good example of this is planning cases, where say we had something in the UK where they were doing hydraulic fracturing, or they wanted to, and the cumulative effect on a small island of all these something like 80 hydraulic fracturing fracking sites, all spread along, would have caused tidal waves or earthquake or something really not very good, taken as a whole. But what happens is that they put in the planning applications one by one. The law only looks at each planning application in isolation to the big picture. And so because the footprint of where they're going to be drilling down is quite small, they'll get approved. But if you look at the big picture of what's happening, it's absolutely disastrous. And so that's the kind of, the sort of the way the law itself, its mechanism of operation is mechanistic. And so when we talk about rights in nature, we've also got to move more into co-creative problem solving methods of law, collaborative methods of law, restorative justice, we've got to look at other alternatives to a purely adversarial court battle, because often that ignores the big picture. And for nature's rights, we need the law to evolve. So anyway, this mechanistic, we spoke about how it's encoded in law. The law then protects financial interests over life. And it just manages the worst externalities of this degenerative cycle, which is kind of like the parasite host. So it's the way our laws are working at the moment are such that, it enables the corporations to keep profiting from overexploitation of the earth, but we can't kill the host off completely. And so that's where, a few protections come in. But living like a parasite in this scarcity model is not very inspiring for the human being. And I believe, as I'm sure all of you do, otherwise you wouldn't be here, that we deserve better than that, that Mother Earth has provided for us more generously, if we can only open up to the vulnerability that that creates within us, if we can open up to our creativity, and if we can open our hearts to the love that we naturally have for nature and come from that place rather than this struggle, survival struggle, or enslavement. So anyway, the degenerative structures and systems, degenerative outcomes, and so on. So we need to change the paradigm to transform the system, to embody the change. This is our future society with nature's rights. What would that look like? So we start with the healing of trauma, which gives rise to unity consciousness, gives rise to the holistic paradigm worldview, whole system structures, which then naturally generate the positive outcomes like the regenerative economies, pandemic resilience, health and well-being, climate resilience, food security resilience, thriving ecosystems, thriving biodiversity. So we have the whole of society pulling in the same way to generate the health and well-being of the whole. And so we get the regenerative cycle, which aligns with life. And the regenerative cycle then reinforces each other. Each step builds upon each other to reinforce that unity consciousness, which drives collaboration, sharing, abundance, compassion. Yeah, and like I said before, we need to think in terms of win-win, systemic win, whole systems problem-solving approaches to law, and it's a win for everyone because law based on interdependence scales up solutions. At the moment, the solutions are all there, but there's no investment, not much investment going towards them. There's a heavy dependence on the old dying system. And really what law can do is to help to make that shift more concrete, to force the investment to go in the direction of the solution rather than to cling on to what is naturally dying away. Yeah, so with nature's rights, of course, nature will be represented in the economic, political, social, legal decision-making as stakeholder, which then would lead to distributive economies, regenerative agriculture, renewable energy, ecosystem restoration, different indicators for progress instead of GDP, well-being indicators, eco-villages, community renewal, robust biodiversity protection, and so on. So now coming to, so how would all of this work in a model in practice? So this is the model that I developed for the European Economic and Social Committee, which a lot of various places have been expressing a lot of interest in this model that we came up with for the Charter. So if we look at our current sustainability model, you've got nature, you've got people, you've got economy. But in this model, if you look at the rights, there's human rights, corporate rights, nature has no rights. Also, in the current sustainability model, it's assumed that each actor is equal and that sustainability happens at the intersection where these circles cross. But in reality, the only player that can operate independently of the others there is actually nature, because the others are utterly dependent on the existence of nature to be functioning and thriving in order to exist. Also, there is a fallacy that economy and people, that human rights and corporate rights are equal, and they need to battle it out in court, as we know, on equal footing. But that's not the case, not even in law, because human rights are only enforceable against governments. Corporate rights and property rights are enforceable against everyone. They're enforceable against governments as well as private actors. So they operate in the realm of private law as well as public law. So if you had nature's rights, which were more akin to human rights and only enforceable against governments, It would be ridiculous because most of the infringements of nature's rights are done by private actors like corporations, multinationals, and so on. So what we propose with the nature's rights model is if you take those circles and you turn them into concentric circles, you have nature's rights. As a subsystem of nature's rights, you have human rights. Subsystem of human rights, you have economic rights. This mirrors the natural order because without any people, there's no economy, and without nature, there's no people and no economy. So it makes sense that nature is the foundation of people and economy. And so nature's rights is the foundation of human rights and economic rights. And if we enact nature's rights and we just drop it into the existing system of rights without this reframing, without setting out the relationship between the other rights, that the rights of nature are foundational, it will not work. Because again, we'll be having a legal fiction, which is not based on reality. So we need to make this correction within the actual system of rights. So this is why we called our study Reframing the Notion of Rights. And we also need to reframe how rights are held in society. It's more about right relationship than it is about fighting my right against your right, because in our model, economic rights support human rights. Human rights and economic rights support nature's rights. And if you have an economic right that isn't supporting human rights or nature's rights, that economic right would not be viable. So in this way, you protect the integrity of the whole. Now, if we are to look at, we take this one step further and we take our nature's rights model, we have our three circles. So we have nature, we have people, and we have economy. And then we add a fourth circle on the base, the planetary boundaries. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the planetary boundary discussion. There's a group of scientists who've been proposing this for the past decade. They've done a lot of research in so there are 9 key systems, geochemical processes in the planet that maintain life on Earth as it is now in the state that human beings can operate. The red markings on that circle in the diagram is where we are way past the danger zone. And strangely enough, this isn't climate change. This is the nitrogen cycle and it's biodiversity loss. Now, at the moment, there's a lot of emphasis going on energy transition and climate change. Not much emphasis on biodiversity loss, but that's already in the critical zone. Nitrogen cycle actually links directly to our food and agricultural system.
Attorney, you have 5 minutes to finish your presentation.
Sorry, I can't hear that.
You
Sorry,
have 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. All right. So anyway, planetary boundaries, you have, and then if you map out the sustainable development goals on the top 3 circles, so you have nature, people, and economy, what you get is a comprehensive model for the implementation of nature's rights or Earth jurisprudence using existing indicators. In this, the economic rights are embedded within the human rights, which is embedded within nature's rights. And in this model, nature is embedded in the planetary boundaries. The human sphere, human society is embedded within nature and the planetary boundaries, and economy is further embedded within people, within nature, and within the planetary boundaries. So there is a natural system of accountability. It's a much more sophisticated and integrated system than our current sustainability model. So I'm going to leave it there. I don't know if we have any time for questions, but I leave you with this model, with this image. And if anybody has any questions or wants to take anything on this further, you can contact me, contact@naturesrights.org. And
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.